Welcome to week 6 of our course. I'm going to get on for just 2 short videos this week. You're going to hear more about how to navigate this week from me than you are content. I had a brainstorm over the weekend and this morning about how to make this more responsive to our diverse learning needs. So you'll notice in Blackboard, there are 3 parts to this week. The first part is your required reading and resources, which look at the IEP as a whole and kind of give you an overview. And the second part is an assignment for you to dig in deep to one of your own IEPs, also the IEP as a whole. That second part is asking you to identify some of your needs, because the third part is really asking you to dig deep, plan your own learning, access only the modules and resources you need, and report back to me. So let me dig a little deeper so that this isn't unmanageable and unnavigable. But first I want to talk a little bit about why we do it this way. There are so many IEP resources out there, wonderful resources, but I find that you really need them when you need them. You need them when you're writing an IEP for an individual student and you need to focus in on transition planning or state assessments become a big deal. So this is my way of making all these resources available to you and for you to use based on your own learning, because the second thing behind this is that counties and schools and districts all use IEPs and have expectations around IEPs a little bit differently. So I want to make sure I'm responsive to how you're using and seeing IEPs in your school's classrooms and for your students. The IEP is an integral part of special education. If you look at our gears, again, which is the last slide in this series, the IEP cannot function. The laws, requirements, and high quality instruction for students with disabilities cannot happen without all of those wheels turning. And the IEP is really almost the spoke. It's a really big part of that. It's also super complex. IEPs can be frustrating, and this is the Gen D version of what I think an IEP should look like. An IEP is a contract with the family, the student, and the school. It's a contract like if any of you have ever gotten a mortgage through a bank and you have to initial all the pages. To me, parts of the IEP feel that way. They're requirements, they're legal, and they're compliant, and they're just straight up a business contract. So in my brain, I think we should have new IEPs. And I think that the contract part of the IEP should be about 15, 20 minutes where we go through the legalese, we check the boxes, we initial the boxes. I want to see the bulk of the IEP as the team working together, asking the student about his or her dreams, realities, issues, strengths. I want to see that be more of a fluid, strengths-based plan for the year and for the student's goals. I think too often we see the IEP as a strict contract that has to be in compliance, and we lose the creative dreaming planning piece of that. I find IEPs a little bit annoying, and you're going to hear more about that in your resources. Most importantly, I'm being responsive to your learning because you're all at very different points of learning and use with IEPs. Some of you are writing and leading your own. Some of you are just observing them. Some of you might be in the place of a parent and you're at a very different point in how you see IEPs. So I want to be very responsive to your learning, which leads us back to the 3 different parts. I'm going to dig in a little bit here with part 1 and part 2. Then I have a short video later on in the lecture about part 3. So let's talk about part 1. If you've got Blackboard up on your screen also, you can take a look. Part 1's pretty basic. I've uploaded a chapter for you from the Essentials of Special Education Law. It's all there for you. You don't have to purchase anything. Chapter 6. I'd like you to read that. I'm not going to say skim it, but I want you to read it for just some overview background knowledge of the legal parts of an IEP. I don't think that's something you're going to have to come back to and cite and dig into. So I want you to read it with that in mind. It's not a deep read, but maybe a little bit more than a skim. After you've read that, I've got 2 videos for you to watch from Dr. Shelley Moore. They're called 5 More Minutes. They're each 5 minutes, and both of them deal deeply with really thinking about that Gen D version of an IEP where we're a team and we need to really exploit the students' strengths and plan for their goals and dreams. I want you to in your brain, as you engage with these, I want you to compare and contrast that chapter with those videos from Dr. Shelley Moore. Then I'd like you to dig into part 2. It is a good idea to do these in this order, 1, 2, 3. Part 2 is a project for you. I'm asking you to grab an IEP of a student that you work with and fill out the Kent ISD IEP rubric. It is 33 items where you have to rate the IEP that you're looking at. You give it a score, and then you put a little comment in on why you think that IEP deserves that score. You can put in evidence from the IEP. You could put in a simple short statement of your understanding. You could even put in, I don't know where this is, or I don't know what this is. I've provided lots of examples, samples, and models for you in that assignment description, which is in part 2 of this week's Blackboard module. I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview, gives you some tips for part 1 and part 2. Again, part 1 and part 2 are the IEP as a whole, kind of putting us all on the same page. Stay tuned for part 3.